Milan's a fun country to play. It starts in northern Italy. It has a few challenges at the start of the game, but generally speaking, the events are pretty fun. There's two main privileges that you need to worry about. One you can give to the burghers, and another you start with, and that is assigned to the nobles. The rights that you can grant to the merchants allow for a plus 10% production efficiency to fine cloth, and this can really help scale your economy in the early game. The nobles, on the other hand, start with a privilege that gives them minus 5% control to all your territories. So it's a pretty bad debuff, and you always want to get rid of it. The silver lining, though, is that Milan starts with, relatively speaking, a lot of territory. It is northern Italy after all, but the vast majority of this territory is not integrated, so you're going to have control problems anyway. In terms of RGOs, Milan starts with a good variety. They start with iron. They've got several wood provinces nearby, and they even have a gold in the northwest. The primary culture of Milan is Lombard. There is a few provinces nearby that you want to take just to unite your culture group, but generally speaking, most Lombards start under the rule of Milan to begin with. Verona owns a province called Brescia, which has Lombards, and also there are city-states like Parma and Pavia that are also primarily Lombard as well. That being said, you don't want to go for early expansion as Milan. The reason why is because within the first couple of months, you're going to get an event, and this event is going to put you into a war with Verona, your neighbour. The advantage of this event is you don't get the negative malices from declaring war. When it comes to events, there's a lot of flavour. One of the events you get early on is something that gives you an extra cabinet minister, and this helps a ton when you've got a lot of unintegrated territory to deal with. There is an argument to be made that you want to go for decentralization. Since you start with so much unintegrated land anyway, it's better to just give it to vassals and let them rule over it. But for the sake of this campaign, I've decided to go for centralization for the benefits to crown power. That's not going to stop me from creating vassals, though. The main point is that if I went decentralization, my vassals would be more loyal. Because I'm going for centralization, as a result, my vassals are less loyal. So Milan and Verona go to war. The levies are raised. They are united a little bit outside of the city of Milan, and they are going to seek out enemy armies, destroy them in the field, before moving on to sieging down enemy forts. Wars in the early game revolve around battles. You can get 50% war score alone from fighting them, and then also, depending on your casus belli, you can get 25% tickers as well. So in the early game, sieges are not as important as they are later in the campaign. How you deploy and use your levies is also very important in the early game because there's no professional armies, and once you run out of levies, you've practically lost the war. So it's a good idea to avoid high casualty events, whether it be sieging in heavy winter or assaulting forts. After a series of battles, the manpower pool of Verona has been depleted, and we have numerical superiority in this war. Losing the battle means that the enemy army has been routed, and it's just a case of following up now to shatter what remains of their forces. Getting a free war on Verona is very nice as Milan in the early game because they've got the territory of Brescia. Now, this territory is inhabited by Lombards, which is Milan's primary culture. It's always nice to get an early war in some form, just to get the antagonism a little bit up, so it's ticking down, if that makes sense. And then you obviously just want to take the usual stuff, the war apparitions, the ducats, the humiliation, etc. Now, Brescia is considered a historical subject, not a custom one. Why is this important? Because historical subjects get cores. So they're going to start with full control over their territory, whereas if they were a custom subject, they would first have to core their territories, which would obviously take time. So it just gets the vassal up and running, gets their income up strong so they can donate it to me, and also it increases their levies too. You don't want to wait around on annexing them because it is your primary culture, so it's going to integrate fast and you're going to get cores on it. But again, as Milan, you've got a lot of unintegrated territory to deal with, so it's a win-win. You get to make a vassal, they get strong income, strong levies, and it's just less territory that you have to deal with right now. In terms of economy, I want to max out my fine cloth guilds in Milan. The reason for this is that I've got about 180,000 pops in the city at the moment. Once the Black Death comes, this is obviously going to be reduced, and that's going to reduce the max total number of buildings I can construct. So if I can max out fine cloth before the Black Death, I'm going to have a higher production efficiency, even though my population shouldn't allow it. This is combined with the 10% production efficiency you can get from the privilege assigned to your burgher class. What does this mean? It means that Milan is going to have north of 30% production efficiency for fine cloth. This means that your buildings are going to be more competitive against other fine cloth buildings in the Genoa market. A little bit of a misplay to start the campaign. I started building my cloth guilds immediately without considering the price of masonry, and what I want to do is reduce the price of masonry before I start a mass building spree, because that'll reduce the base cost of each building that I construct in Milan. This nation gets a ton of unique events when it comes to works of art, how your government functions, whether you're a monarchy or republic, and I can really appreciate this considering how much of a staple Milan was in EU4. This combined with the fact that you get that free war against Verona at the start and the unique position where you've got a ton of land but it's unintegrated makes it a very interesting and unique start in EU5. First parliament of the campaign, and it goes to expanding the gravel road network. I have no intentions of building roads anytime soon. The reason why I'm picking this up is if you do pass it, you get 10 points towards centralization, which is going to be something I'm going to push. The reason I am doing this is to increase crown power, which increases my influence over my estates. You could probably go for a free casus belli here and declare another war, but I'm content with the fact that my antagonism is ticking down and I can always get it next time. I really don't have a lot to gain from going to war right now because I need to integrate these territories. That's just simply going to take time, so my priority is consolidating my position rather than expanding. So you can see here I've reduced the price of masonry, which reduces the price of tailors' guilds in Milan. It's something that players are going to have to wrap their heads around that they didn't have to deal with in EU4. That is the fact that not only do you control the outputs of a building, but you also control the inputs. So things like reducing cost are within your control. You should do them. And that applies to outputs as well. It's not just about how much money you can get out of a building, it's how little can you spend on it. Another thing that you should probably do at the start of every campaign, so you don't forget, is change over your employment system. So it starts at first come, first serve. Change this over to infrastructure, then most profitable. I'm not going to explain it, just trust me, bro. This also gives benefits to capital economy, which is a value we want to push as well. And the reason for this is it gives production efficiency. Production efficiency is super, super important. It does exactly what you would think it does. It makes your buildings more efficient. But the important thing to remember is it makes your inputs more efficient and your outputs more efficient. What does that mean? It means you're spending less on the inputs required to make the building function. And it means that you're getting more goods out of the building, which you can then sell. So very important. Milan is already a highly urbanized state, so I go for the admin focus in the Age of Renaissance, mainly for the max literacy. The second war of the campaign is against noble rebels, mainly because I mismanaged how I handled the first parliament. It's okay though, they only have one fort, so it won't take that long. When your capital city contains 1/5 of your population, 180,000 people, it's very hard to be afraid of revolts. Just be careful when handing out favours during a parliament because it can really annoy certain estates. In terms of text, I'm just going to finish off the Age of Traditions and then I can move on to the Age of Renaissance. The rebel army is defeated, and now it's just a case of mopping up the stragglers and sieging down their capital. This war hasn't slowed Milan down at all. If it didn't occur, they would just be consolidating their position anyway, so it's a relatively minor event in the grand scheme of things. With the civil war over, Milan can concentrate on nation building, continuing to core their territories while developing their economic base within their capital city. This parliament was planned to be one in which many laws are pushed through, but this cannot be the case since promote integration processes came up, and naturally in Milan's position, this needs to be pursued as a priority. So instead of passing laws, the parliament fabricates a casus belli against Pavia. This is an important target to go after because their primary accepted pops are Lombard the same way as Milan, so they are the perfect target to conquer. Economic development in the capital is beginning to scale up nice and quickly. There are 11 tailors guilds there with an additional 2 on the way. There's a maximum of 18 that can be built. It's important to hit this target before the Black Death because the population will be reduced, and as a result it will reduce the total number of max buildings you can have in the city. The third war is declared against Pavia, and the real goal is simply to conquer their territory. They need to be annexed, and once they're annexed, they can be released again as a historical subject. So very similar to Brescia, historical subjects start with cores, which means this vassal will be turbocharged from the very beginning. So another powerful vassal, and because they are Lombards, they're going to be very easy to integrate down the road. Very simple tactics, just seek out the enemy army, destroy it, and then worry about the sieges after. Fighting on 3 fronts didn't matter. It was a very simple war, and at this stage, while the occupations continue, the army can be disbanded because there's no threat anymore. The Black Death has arrived, and I am on a timer to finish the cloth guilds in Milan. I've come to terms with the fact I'm going to lose half my country, but I want the cloth guilds to be maxed out. That'll give me additional production efficiency, if that's the case. The enemy allies are pieced out at the cost of war reparations and ducats. Pavia, on the other hand, is not so lucky. They are going to be reorganized into a vassal of Milan. Taking a look at the diplomacy income, you can see why it's so important to have your vassals start with cores. Brescia is already printing money for the state of Milan. Running in the background, you can see that the efforts to integrate the state have paid off. Cores are starting to pop up, and of course, you get cores not only from integrating territories, but also having accepted pops in that area too. The Crown carries out additional government reforms, implementing plutocratic ethos, which gives legislative efficiency, but also some base support in our parliaments, which will help with law reforms and also getting casus belli and obviously just getting general issues through the parliament. The Black Death has arrived in the countryside. The state is going to sponsor mass forgiveness as well as segregate the infected, but for the most part, they are just going to let this illness burn through the country. At this stage, most unintegrated territories have been integrated, so the priority has shifted from consolidation to really juicing up the economy, ensuring that we get a steady and strong income. We can do this early by leveraging our unique burger reform for +10 production efficiency. And then more longer term, our priority for our economy isn't just to build for the sake of building, it's to reduce the price of the buildings. So that means bringing down the price of lumber, bringing down the price of sand, things like that there. The effect of the Black Death really is there's going to be a deficit of burgers. That's just simply how it works. That means I don't have to build buildings right now. It would be totally wasted because I'm already promoting from my peasant class to my burgher class. So building's not important when the Black Death is ripping through your country. I am building libraries in my major population centres. That's kind of the exception to the rule, but I just can't throw down 20 tool workshops in Milan because there would just be there'd be a deficit of thousands of jobs there, and I wouldn't be able to fill it that quickly. We do get an event which is basically a 50-50 chance of our ruler dying, and it turns out he survives, so he is destined to rule for a little while longer, I believe. I finished taking pretty much everything I need out of the Age of Traditions, so I've moved on to the Age of Renaissance, and for now I'm just focusing on proximity cost. It doesn't really matter this early in the game, it's not going to make a huge difference, but long term it's totally fundamental. It is time for the third parliament. This one, there's no ifs or buts about it. This one is all about law changes. It's all about forcing through law changes with the consent of the estates, obviously keeping them happy. We start with some decent laws, but there's always things that you need to tidy up, and we will take advantage of this parliament to do so in a stable manner. Bit of a misplay here. I thought this free casus belli was against Parma, not Pavia. Pavia is our vassal, so it's totally useless, but there you go. Parliament is over. I was able to force through 2 separate law changes, and I was able to give an urban seat to the burghers. That meant that I was able to actually finish the issue successfully, which means no stability hit, so it was a very productive parliament. I just want to point out how huge this modifier is. It gives 1% population growth for 10 years, and I'm just going to capitalize on this here. I normally wouldn't encourage migration to Milan just because of how huge that city is. Even after the Black Death, it's sitting on 112,000, but a 1% population growth modifier is absolutely huge, and I just want to take advantage of that. So what am I doing in terms of economy? I've got die makers in production. These are being put down in territories where they have access to lumber. The lumber will give these places a production efficiency, and everything discussed when talking about the Fine Cloth Guild applies to dyes as well. The production efficiency can be leveraged to generate profits, but also because they're dyes, and dyes are an input for the fine cloth guilds in Milan, it's going to reduce the cost of running that operation and therefore making profit. So we profit off the dyes, we profit off the fine cloth. Look, I'm going to be the brave one here and say that an event that gives development and prosperity to practically your entire country might be a little bit good, okay? But it also gives a tailor's guild. And Tailor's Guild improves production efficiency, which as a result improves the efficiency of every other Tailor's Guild in Milan too, which we have a lot of. You can see that I've accepted the cultures. I should have done that from the very beginning. And also 400,000 people died in the Black Death. That means we lost roughly 40% of our population. The truce with Verona has expired. That means we can go back in. I'm going to be using a claims on province, casus belli, to take Parma. And we've got 5,000 men after the Black Death against their 8,000. But we also have very strong vassal states that are going to be able to bridge the gap. It's going to be the exact same textbook as the first war against Verona. We're going to seek out their army, destroy it, and then worry about the sieges after. We are, unfortunately, going to have to siege in this war simply because of how the casus belli works. The defender is going to have a ticking positive war score. We want to take that away from him so we can enforce quite punitive demands. We catch the enemy sieging down one of our vassals' forts in the mountains, and that's all she wrote for this war. It's pretty much just a mop-up operation from this point onwards. I'm still working on the economy in the background, and now that the Tailors Guilds have been expanded and complete, I'm working on expanding and completing the Tools Guild. I've also begun to annex my vassal Brescia. This is important because they're Lombard, and I'll also get cores on them straight after the integration process is complete. I talked earlier about how the nobles get a privilege at the start of the game that gives minus 5% control to each of your territories. This event allows us to revoke the Visconti city-states from the patricians, and that is perfect. That'll give us 5% control in every territory that we control now. So Verona is finally ready to come to terms with their defeat. We're going to take the province of Parma and we're going to turn it into a vassal state. We're also going to cancel the subject that Verona has, Lucca. We're going to take ducats and war reparations as well. Some good options when it comes to the fourth parliament. I'm going to promote the integration process to speed up the rate at which we core our territories. So it's imperative that this issue passes and we can't let it fail. So just to illustrate the power of this event, in less than 5 years, we've got 20,000 extra people that wouldn't be there in Milan. So not only are we encouraging migration, but that migration is also benefiting from the population growth, which means more people are born locally. So I'm trying to reduce the input costs for my cloth guilds in Milan. I can do this by making dyes as discussed previously, but also I can build spinners guilds. Now I want to build the spinners guilds in places with access to wool because you guessed it, it's going to get a production efficiency. Apart from that, I want to crash the price of lumber, mainly because it impacts everything from expanding RGOs to building roads. So critical for me to take advantage of the Alps and build lumber mills there. You can see in the Genoa market, the burghers are importing about 13 units of lumber. This is bad for us because we're not going to get the building discounts. So in an ideal world, we want the burghers to be exporting from this market, and we'll start getting discounts once the burghers stop importing lumber. I'm not trying to print money right now. I'm trying to lower the costs of everything so it's cheaper for me to build. And as a result, it's going to make me more money in the long run. You can see that the lumber RGO requires tools, and because I've scaled up production within the capital, I get a 33% discount on building every single lumber mill. However, if you look at trying to expand the road network, right now we're not producing enough lumber. You can see that we've got a 0.53% price increase, so the ideal is for this to go from 0.53 to negative 33. Now that I've got my proximity cost researched, I'm going to go for Renaissance here and really push for the additional cabinet member. Brescia has been integrated. They've been annexed. This gives me a province all court with Lombard as their primary culture. So this is just a fantastic addition to the state. Next parliament, I didn't really get any good options, so I'm going to go for some law changes. The annexation of Brescia is paying dividends. You can see that one of the territories that was just annexed from the vassal state is actually our most taxable area for the commoners. It also happens to be an iron province. I've turned off the guilds that produce furniture, mainly because their input is wood and I want to reduce the price of wood so I can impact the market by reducing demand. The economic policies that I've implemented mean that our capital city is practically producing as much tools as the rest of the market combined. It's a much more deeper economic system than EU4 in terms of we don't want to make a profit off of our tools. In fact, we want to make them as cheap as possible because they are input goods for other buildings. So by reducing input costs, we increase profits in other places of the economy. Sand is another good that we want to reduce the cost of. Burgers are importing an absolute ton of it right now, and we want this to be cheap as well for the exact same reasons as lumber, the same reasons as tools. In the meantime, the annexation of the second vassal begins, Pavia, and they will be integrated into Milan proper very soon. Again, because these vassals are our culture, they integrate faster. You can see that my efforts to increase the supply of lumber in the Genoa market are beginning to pay off. The burgers are only importing 4 units now. I also form a alliance with the Merchant Republic of Genoa to our south, so a very handy ally to have indeed. Our previous ruler was able to survive the Black Death, but unfortunately he could not survive time. Our new Signore isn't exactly something to write home about. He won't be uniting Italy anytime soon. The government has decided to enact some new reforms, and they're going to go for local army organization, which will increase the size of the peasant levy muster when we are at war. It's also going to increase the peasant power as the estate, but that's okay. It's the same argument for increasing the power of the burghers. If the burghers and the peasants get stronger, it means the nobles are getting weaker. My war against lumber deficits continues. I am just trying to expand the supply as much as possible. Basically, I'm putting lumber mills in any territory that has forest, and then any territory that has RGOs, I'm going to use to build sand pits, because sand pits get a production efficiency bonus from lumber. Tools also have a production efficiency from iron, so the city in Brescia will be a perfect place to scale up tool operations in the future. Another parliament, and I get the promote integration process issue, so this has to pass to increase the rate at which we integrate our territories. I am, however, going to fabricate a claim on Mantua. This is going to be a nice little territory to pick up if we can get it. I declare war on the Republic of Mantua. I also have my ally, the Merchant Republic of Genoa, coming in on my side, and the war goal will be to take the province of Mantua. The war is relatively straightforward. We already have a strong population base, but the integration of Brescia also means that we get additional levies too, so it's not very difficult for us to move in, fight the battles, and then obviously do the sieges afterwards. The war, in fact, is going so well that I've begun to disband my levies because I simply just don't need them. The research is complete, and I get an additional cabinet minister, which will help with integrating provinces, but it also opens the door to me researching texts that allow me to gain more crown power as well. It doesn't take much time at all to annex Pavia. The war was decisive from the very beginning. I'm able to start to piece out allies in this war, so I'm going to seize a little bit of territory just because it's part of provinces that I own, and I'm also taking the usual ducats, war reparations, a little humiliation there now and again. With the most recent war over, you can really start to see Milan is starting to consolidate, starting to dominate northern Italy. There's really nobody in our backyard that we have to worry about. Something that you should always do as the HRE is immediately improve relations with the Emperor. Because I have friendly relations, he's willing to give me ducal rights for free. So it's a nice bonus of being in the HRE. So you can see that we're rank 45 now. At the start of the campaign, it was something like rank 500. So if you go in with the right decisions and thought process, you're going to be absolutely fine. The reason why I'm increasing the supply of lumber and sand is because I want to expand the road network. Now, this video is already way too long, but if the video was longer, I would go on to expand the road network. In case you're wondering, why am I building lumber mills? Why am I building sand pits? The goal is to expand the road network, but obviously that takes time, and I'm already over half an hour. And this stuff really does fundamentally matter, because if I didn't have the discounts, if the value of things like lumber and sand weren't low in my market, I would effectively be paying double for every single road. So when you go out and you expand the road network, you want to do it in a favorable position, and that means reducing the price of the inputs. So what I've done when it comes to Parma is I've enforced culture. That means that a certain number of their Emilian pops have become Lombards, which will make the integration process quicker. There is the downside that it makes them disloyal, but this will tick up slowly over time. And because they aren't our primary culture group, we don't want to annex them straight away. We can wait like 10 years and integrate them then. We also got some flavour in an event which allows us to move our capital from Milan to Pavia. I want to keep my capital in Milan because I want to centralise my burgers there, but I don't know my Italian history very well. Pavia used to be like a capital city back in the day, like Magyar times. So it's interesting that they included that there for people that care. So there's like two dimensions for my goal for this video. I want people who watch this video to know that Milan has a lot of content, especially compared to some nations in this game. There's a lot of flavor, and I think it does it justice for Milan and EU4 that they made such an effort to make Milan a fun nation to play in EU5. My second point would be that if you're following this as a guide, input costs are really important and you need to drive down the cost of things like tools, things like lumber, sand, etc. My next step, if I was to continue this campaign, would be to expand the road network. But I do not want to expand the road network at double the price. Think about it. Think about how much you have to build to expand the road network. Now double it. You absolutely have to reduce the input prices. Sorry for the delay in terms of uploads. I wanted to wait until I had a couple of 100 hours in the game before I started making videos like this one. So if you do enjoy this, please do the cringe stuff, like and subscribe. But apart from that there, I hope you enjoyed the video. Good luck.